So the constitutional remedy strengthens the vital force, improves general health, and reduces susceptibility to illness. So even if you're detoxing a vaccine or something, it's very popular these days to detox all the time. We do have to be careful with it, though. We're ideally, as homeopaths, we also give a constitution or the simillimum. So we look at all of these aspects of this person right now. Traditionally, the constitution was stated that that would be your constitution forever. And there's kind of some really classical homeopaths say, we can give different remedies at different times, but generally we have 4 main constitutional remedies. It's really not the case. And they say if you get someone back to the ultimate state of health, they will fit into one of those 4 people. I don't know what they were thinking when they said that, to be honest, because one, that never happens that we get back to that, but we've got billions of people in the world. How could we all be the same 4 constitutional remedies? So Bridie asked, can a constitutional change? Yeah. And the way that really we work with what comes. We work with, when the patient comes, we work with what comes. So for example, this patient comes and I can clearly see that they are tarantula, which is a spider. And I give the remedy and it helps them. And it takes away some of the symptoms. But when I go back to my materia medica, they still are that spider. So I'll still keep giving it. But then eventually there's nothing apparent for that spider, but something else might have popped up that looks a little different. And then so I'll pivot and change to a different remedy. And often we have to do that these days because we're working through layers, lots of layers. So the traditional idea of a constitution, which is like body type and, whether they like this or that, that doesn't necessarily change, but the remedy that we call the constitution definitely can change. So this is always about understanding the vital force, understanding when the vital force is, I've seen that you see this problem at this level and I'm resolved. And now I get a different problem, especially with the complex kids, right? We have like a layer that we've resolved and another layer and working through like that. So when I studied homeopathy, there was this idea that we just gave that one remedy, that was it. And that should solve the whole puzzle. And then I got into practice and I was like, wow, sometimes that happens. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes it's just like, wow. And other times it's just like, okay, that's gone and that's gone. But now the person like looks really different. What am I going to do with that? There was also an idea, some people used to come and be like, I just want to know my constitution. And then they expect that they should take that same remedy all the time, even if they get an acute illness. And maybe some homeopaths still treat like that. But in my experience, it's not the case. We can have a constitutional, but the constitutional is like really accessing that really totality picture of what is presenting at the moment. And I hope I answered your question, Bridie. But yes, it can change in a nutshell. So, and the miasms in homeopathy. Oh, good. This is our predisposition to disease that we inherit through our families, but also in some ways through our environments. And so initially what the miasm is, what the miasm that Samuel Hahnemann wrote about was that at a point in time, there was an illness exposure that was suppressed, that wasn't actually resolved in the body. Okay, so let's talk about Sora, which is the first miasm, was scabies. So there was an epidemic of scabies. So many people were affected and it was suppressed at the time. And what happens when we suppress something? It doesn't leave us. It doesn't get resolution. It just stays in there and actually stays in our cells. So it's within us. It could even, we can say, shape our genes and our gene expression, which we know these days that's definitely possible. So we have Hahnemann talked about the 3 primary miasms, and we could be any of these. And often when we look at the family history, we look at what diseases have been in the family. Bye, Jess. We look at the diseases and what's happened in the family and what might have been suppressed, because you'll find that that there are these patterns that keep coming down. I mean, I think it's, we do see that. We see the families that have eczema. Oh, but my mum had eczema. Okay, I'm going back. And my dad had eczema and all of that kind of thing. So we're looking at these 3, but there are a lot of miasms. But it's really good to know about miasms, because sometimes when we're working with a case, it can get stuck. So the remedy that's still really indicated stops working. My final thesis in my studies was when the indicated remedy fails to act. That was what I called it, because it was like, what do you do when that remedy, that you're sure it's that remedy, stops working? That's when we need to look at causation. And miasm can be one of those things. So the miasm needs to be addressed, and we have remedies for that. So these are 3 main miasms that Hahnemann identified. Sora, which was about scabies, which was the suppression of scabies. Psychosis, or the psychotic miasm, was the suppression of gonorrhea. And it's the miasm of overgrowth, excess, warts, and suppression. You will study these. Everyone's done, half of you have probably done the nosodes last semester, and miasms, and the rest of you will do that next year in the second half of the year. And then the syphilitic miasm was the suppression of syphilis, or the pandemic of syphilis, the epidemic. Modern practice adds tubercular. There's a tubercular miasm from tuberculosis. Cancer miasm, AIDS miasm, they say. Ringworm, Rajan Sankaran, he introduced the ringworm, typhoid, leprosy miasms, and the acute miasm. And now some homeopaths talk about the radiation miasm. And there will be, or there is, a COVID miasm for sure. So many people were affected. So many people were vaccinated. Vaccination is a form of suppression. It doesn't actually allow our body to resolve an illness. And obviously, if you think about vaccination, though, the original idea is really like cures like, or same cures same, giving a small dose of an illness to a person to mount an immune response. Something happened and everything got so complicated with vaccines, and now we have a different situation going on with a lot of other things. But when most of us have been affected by something, it does change us. It does change how our bodies work. And I would say the COVID miasm will look like fatigue. It'll look like mold illness, really similar to mold illness or mast cell activation, as we know from long COVID. I'm digressing though. Do people have multiple miasms? Great question. Yes, they do. And there will be a predominant one. And when you learn about the miasms, you will be able to see it. But we're dynamic. And we definitely have more than one. And recently, 2 years ago, I mean, my family's very tubercular, and there's a bit of psychotic miasm in there. And I've worked with both of those. But 2 years ago, I kind of discovered that this deeper aspect of that there's a syphilitic miasm in there. And it just kind of came to the front. It's like, okay, now you're here for me to work with. So, this is dynamic. I mean, this journey as a homeopath that you're going on is like never ending, like I've been a homeopath for 15 years. I started studying 21 years ago, and it's always rolling on. We're dynamic in the way that we interact with our environment and what comes up. I see syphilis coming up actually in perimenopausal women or menopausal women. That's when their syphilitic miasm might come up, when their bones start to demineralize and things are breaking down a little bit. So, I feel like often people can be helped by addressing the syphilitic miasm at that point in time. So it helps to clear the obstacles, as I said, or maintaining cause, and it strengthens the vital force at its roots. So this is, sometimes I'll explain the miasm as like, this is the soil from which everything's growing. Okay, so sometimes, we can give the remedy that's matching what we're seeing and hearing up here at the top of the tree. But the miasmatic prescribing is so deep, like it'll go back to the ancestors and change the terrain in a way of what we're working with. It is such a unique part of healing, and such a unique gift actually to address miasm, and such an incredible insight of Samuel Hahnemann to kind of bring this to the forefront. So this is also really important. It's funny, a lot of homeopaths feel like they don't understand miasmatic treatment or miasm, and it's been used very systematically, but I work with miasms all the time because we are so corrupted with, everything that we're exposed to these days. So this is just another term that you'll probably hear is polycrest remedies. So these are the big remedies of homeopathy.